Hey, what's up guys? My name is Sal, and this is another expedition log. Today we're bringing the story of Jim Rouse and his consortium of malls to a close in ExLog Phase 4. I've covered so many of his amazing properties over the years, from the sumptuous White Marsh Mall, Harborplace and its ailing Pavilions, and the now abandoned Burlington Center in New Jersey. Mr. Rouse has had an incredible career and left an impenetrable legacy for the world to enjoy, hopefully for centuries, if not millennia. As always, I hope all of you are well out there, taking care of yourselves and living your best lives. Also, only a small percentage of my views come from people that are actually subscribed to me. So if you like this content, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell. It's free, and I love making this stuff for you guys, and there's plenty more coming down the road. So today, I'd like you to come take a walk with me through not just one mall, but 8 Jim Rouse properties, ranging from the abandoned all the way up to the sumptuous, with a brief anamnesis or revisiting inside 5 places I've already shown on my series, and 2 that might show up a bit down the line, finally ending at the House of Rouse itself, the city that he built and its mall in Columbia, Maryland. But first, a word from our sponsor, the troubled and now bankrupt Sizzler restaurant. Gross. Enjoy.
All across America, the song of freedom rings, a song that's growing stronger every day. It tells us when we listen to the message that it sings. Let us lift our voices. We can make the choices. We will make the most of all the best that freedom brings. Sizzler is the one who brings us choices, reaching out across the USA. Each and every day, get a little freedom in your life.
And the buffet court, a whole experience on its own, where you create delicious combinations just the way you want them. It's a restaurant within a restaurant, with all the value, quality, and freedom of choice Americans want. It's unique, it's bold, it's ahead of the competition. Sizzler for the 90s, exactly what America wants.
Sizzler is the choice of America. Sizzler gives you choices every day. That's the Sizzler way. Get a little freedom in your Sizzler. Gets freedom in your Sizzler. Gets freedom.
We begin our anamnesis and walk through the ephemeral House of Rouse with his very first attempt at a mall, albeit open air, which is the Mondawmin Mall in West Baltimore City. Mondawmin opened on October 4th, 1956 as an open air mall, and was enclosed 7 years later, on October 2nd, 1963, and still retains the original spiral staircase and fountain to this day. While Harrendale was Rouse's first enclosed mall, Mondawmin was his first project to use the term mall, which he coined during his urban renewal efforts. And you can see the full episode on this mall in my ExLog 71. The Echelon Mall, now known as the Voorhees Town Center, was the second Rouse property that I covered on the ExLog series. This mall was built in 1970, and it was named after the airport, which operated on the same grounds before the mall. Rouse trademarks such as the clerestory windows and palm trees and angular winding staircases in the adjacent courtyards are all present. Echelon was one of Rouse's very first fully enclosed malls, and it served as almost a whiteboard to get his ideas manifested in reality. You can catch the full coverage and video tour of the Echelon Mall or the Voorhees Town Center in my ExLog 13. Harborplace was the last mall that was built directly under Jim Rouse's supervision before he retired and stepped down from his day-to-day responsibilities at the Rouse Company. While the beautiful and historically thriving gallery was a later addition built in 1987, the Festival Marketplace was opened on July 2, 1980, and consisted of 2 pavilions, which are now ailing, to say the least. I have incredibly fond memories of Harborplace, spending a ton of time skipping class with Fritz to longboard down to the harbor to eat chicken at Hooters. This place was my high school mall, and I can't help but imagine that this mall planted some early subconscious seeds in my mind about the importance of malls and how we need to protect their legacy. The Inner Harbor is an incredibly special place, and every time I go there, I always have a great time. Even though it seems a bit touristy, I still like it, and even more so because there's a Rouse property that's highlighting the entire Inner Harbor. If you're ever in Baltimore for any reason, you have to make sure to see the 2 pavilions and the gallery at Harborplace before they're gone, because they are in trouble. You can check out my episode on the Inner Harbor in ExLog 69. Nice. The White Marsh Mall was my go-to mall after college, when I lived in Baltimore County. It opened on August 12, 1981, and it's been thriving as long as my memory has served me. Now, despite it losing its Sears recently, I'm pretty confident that this mall will continue to thrive for years and decades. It's got every Rouse staple that you can imagine, including the palm trees, the winding angular staircases, and of course, a closed Sears. And you can check out my full episode on the White Marsh Mall in ExLog 73. But if you want to see the now abandoned sister mall to White Marsh, I've covered some truly fantastic malls across my series, but the experiences that I've had at the Burlington Center Mall in Burlington, New Jersey place it securely at the top of my list. The mall opened on August 6, 1982, just 1 year after White Marsh, and was adorned with what I feel is the greatest mall fountain in the country. Petal the Elephant was the centerpiece in the fountain, called the Waterhole by artist Zenos Froudakis. And even though the mall was permanently closed in January of 2018, Petal was rescued, restored, given a parade, and now awaits final placement while protected in a climate-controlled storage room. The Burlington Center Mall was my first exposure to a Rouse mall while producing my series, and to this day I can't think of Rouse without thinking of the Burlington Center Mall in New Jersey. My experience, first struggling to get into the room to see Petal and having a spat with security because they found out that I was filming, and then getting permission to film inside the Burlington Center Mall while conducting an interview with the Tokyo Broadcasting Station. This place has incredibly fond memories for me. And if you want to see the mall when it was alive, check out ExLog 12. But if you'd like to see the full video tour of the abandoned Burlington Center Mall with both anchors, see ExLog 40, which I think is one of my best episodes. The New Orleans Riverwalk opened in 1986 as a festival marketplace akin to Harborplace in Baltimore's Inner Harbor. It was fully redeveloped in 2014 to what we know it as today, and you can expect a full ExLog on this place at some point in the future. As a matter of fact, you can expect a few New Orleans episodes, probably coming up in ExLog Phase 5. Stay tuned for some southern goodness. To round out the Rouse Company ExLog anamnesis is the Center at Salisbury, which was built in 1989, but it wasn't built by Rouse. Rouse acquired this mall in 2013, and while this place might have a bit of Rouse DNA, it's certainly not a shining example of what the Rouse Company was capable of. Frankly, the only reason I visited this mall was because of concerts that I play in Salisbury, Maryland, and there's about a 3% chance that I'll ever produce an ExLog for this mall. But if you're in town, make sure to check out the Boscovs at this place. It's epic.
The only reason you're gonna go to this mall is because of that Boscovs. That's it. Otherwise, stay away.
All of my coverage of Jim Rouse and his company has led me to this very point right now. Welcome to Columbia, Maryland. The city that Rouse built from the ground up, with every inch emanating from its town center, the mall in Columbia. Everywhere you look, there's signs that this is the House of Rouse. And after we take a walk through the mall, I'd like to show you the lakefront. And if you stay after the credits, you'll see some special footage from 2004 of myself and Fritz skateboarding around the mall in Columbia's parking lot like total teenage idiots and getting carted away in their truck by a man named Ty. Jim Rouse founded the city of Columbia in 1967, and it took years and years of careful design and preparation. Mr. Rouse wanted to plan a city that was within an arm's reach of Baltimore and our nation's capital, with everything a big city could offer, while still providing the comfort and solitude of a smaller city with a lake and forests surrounding the residents. Rouse had planned for a mall to rest right in the middle of the town center, where shopping and dining would draw the community in to come together. And on August 2nd, 1971, the $24 million mall in Columbia had its ribbon cutting and grand opening ceremony of its first phase, with senior anchors Woodward and Lothrop, Woodies, and Hochul Cones. Rouse ultimately wanted 3 or 4 phases at Columbia, with ambitious and aggressive expansions planned. At the dedication in 1971, the mall was one long corridor, connecting the Hochul Cones at one end to the Woodies at the other end. Retail outlets were distributed along a 75-foot tall arcade with clerestory windows adorned with steel-braced paneling. Focal points included a central fountain, a fiberglass statue, and an 18-foot 19th century antique street clock brought in from New England. Along the dark red brick concourse, trees and shrubs would line the walkway. The 2 senior anchors were of drastically different aesthetic language and design though, but both were conceived by designer Raymond Loewy and architect William T. Snaith. Fully loaded and each having dining options, notably at Woody's, which offered a full-service restaurant with an outdoor seating area and a cocktail lounge, the 2 senior anchors provided a robust presence at the mall in Columbia, which would draw in massive crowds most days throughout the week. Rouse wanted his city to be interconnected, with various parts overlapping and accessible from every part. When the mall was dedicated, a long bridge was erected, which allowed those visiting the mall to cross the Little Patuxent Parkway safely so that they could take advantage of the beautiful lakefront, which we'll be taking a walk to after we see the rest of the mall. By January of 1975, it was reported that the Hochul's was running at about $35 per square foot in revenue, well below the city average of between $60 to $90 per square foot. Hochul's announced that they'd be closing, and that a Hecht's department store would be taking its place. The Hecht's celebrated its grand opening on August 7th, 1975 at 2 p.m. with vocalist Patti Page there to sign autographs. With the new Hecht's and nearly 100% occupancy, the mall was thriving. But Rouse wanted his flagship mall to grow and evolve in multiple phases, and by January 4th, 1981, the first expansion was announced. On May 1st, 1981, it was announced that a few Sears stores would be running a test program to bring a digital kiosk to select stores to optimize the shopping experience and offer customers something that a salesperson simply couldn't do. Sears began testing a video disc search station called the Teleshop Catalog. The way they describe this thing is, quote, "Video discs are like records pre-recorded with television signals that can be transmitted on properly hooked up televisions," close quote. The user would enter their search criteria on a limited keyboard, and if the results were part of the internal discs, they would display things like model Sherry tees sporting fashion and outerwear, or demonstrations on how to fly a Sears-branded radio-controlled sailplane. This was the future back then, kids. And bringing this exotic technology to users and customers were Sears stores at the Security Square Mall, Harford Mall, and the Cranberry Mall, which is now known as the Town Mall of Westminster. The company stated that the pilot was underway due to the extreme cost in printing their paper catalogs. It seems, though, that Sears was well ahead of its time in digitizing their offerings, and that perhaps, maybe, they should have doubled down to stay ahead of the curve, rather than regressing back to their old ways and printing their catalog for another decade until 1993. Maybe that would have helped. I don't know.
Want to see a case of Bordeaux you can't serve flagrant young?
It took me a few seconds to realize that she was holding a thermometer up to that person's head. I had to think twice. These are weird times we're living in, guys. Super weird times.
Concentrate spread.
The Ultimate 2 case of Bordeaux, a $56 value for just $8.50 with any $6.50 Ultimate 2 purchase, now potion promo.
On August 6, 1981, at 12 p.m., the new $25 million Phase 2 expansion was unveiled with a brand new Sears and concourse. The media office for the mall put out some colorful advertising for the event in the Baltimore Sun. They said, quote, "We'll have jogging suits that burn high calories and stereos that capture high fidelities. We'll have outfits that tie together from top to bottom in pinstripes, plaids, or polka dots. You'll find places to meet old friends or to make new ones next to fountains, under skylights, and surrounded by greenery. So join us at the mall in Columbia where the excitement is building. We've put it all together for you to enjoy." Close quote. Now, I don't know about you guys out there, but when was the last time you heard anyone describe a current mall to have multiple fountains, let alone any sort of lush greenery? This sort of environment seems to be nearly extinct. Sure, you can find dried up fountains all over the place at malls, even at Columbia, but trees? Live shrubbery? There's selfie stations, which are ridiculous, and I don't get it. And I was being looked at by the manager of the mall for taking a selfie, and it looked like he was going to kick me out for doing this. Maybe you'll find some waxy old dead fountain plants and 40-year-old palm trees that need little more than just a bit of sunlight, the faint stain of grease clouds from nearby deep fryers, and the sound of kids screaming for the palm trees to keep growing over the years.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Sal, and I'm now breaking the fourth wall in Columbia, Maryland.
But more and more, malls are opting to empty their fountains and to chop their trees. This is why it's imperative to film these places with a stringent sense of urgency. Protect these memories for future generations and don't let them disappear into the ether, because that's exactly what's happening. Mall fountains and lush greenery are being replaced with selfie stations. What is happening to malls? The second phase of Columbia, along with other expansions and improvements, were headed by Jim Rouse years before they materialized. When Mr. Rouse retired after the grand opening of Harborplace on July 2, 1980, he had already installed decades of forward momentum in his company by way of planned expansions, improvements, and entrepreneurial innovation. While he may have stepped down from his day-to-day operations from the Rouse Company, his vision was still alive and well, so much so that in 1981 he was on the cover of Time magazine, dubbed a master planner, and emblazoned to the left of his beautiful, spectacled, smiling face was the phrase, quote, "Cities are fun," close quote. This man was beloved and trusted by multiple presidents across his career. From being appointed to the National Housing Task Force by Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1953 to head the country in efforts of urban renewal, to Rouse being given the award for the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton in 1995, Rouse was both respected and celebrated throughout his career by U.S. presidents and communities alike. 1 year later, Mr. Rouse would die in his home, in the city that he built in Columbia, Maryland, surrounded by his family on April 9, 1996, and he would be survived by his wife Patty Rouse, 3 children, along with his grandson, actor Edward Norton. On January 18, 1994, Woodward & Lothrop Incorporated was nearly $51 million in debt, with assets totaling $608 million and bills in excess of $659 million, so they filed for Chapter 11. Despite tons of measures being taken to cut costs, the chain would fail. On June 21, 1995, 7 of the remaining Woody's locations were sold to JCPenney, with the rest, including their Wanamaker's locations, being sold to the May Department Store Company. The Woody's at Columbia was fully converted and was reopened as a JCPenney on July 20, 1996, and has my favorite outdoor courtyard of any mall that I've ever visited. We'll head out there in just a bit, so stick with me. It's worth mentioning that just months after the JCPenney was brought to the mall in Columbia, the adjacent Hecht's was expanded and given a 60,000 square foot third floor without making any modification to the mall interior. But these changes marked the beginning of an aggressive expansion at the mall. The Rouse Company was growing exponentially, with a massive win on April 6, 1998, when they purchased the Hahn Company for $1.1 billion. This acquisition brought them, the Towson Town Center, into Rouse's possession, giving them the monopoly on opulent malls in the greater Baltimore metro area. The mall in Columbia saw the opening of its fourth anchor space on Tuesday, November 3, 1998, with the ribbon cutting and grand dedication to Lord & Taylor right in the middle of the mall, accompanying the food court, which at the time was at the center court along with the stately fountain. You see that guy in the blue shirt to your right now? Keep him in mind for later. Along with the renovations to the new JCPenney, the expansion of Hecht's and the addition of a massive parking garage, and the introduction of Lord & Taylor to Columbia, this would mark the end of the Rouse Company's first phase expansion to the mall, costing over $150 million, and serving as the impetus for a second phase expansion set to begin just months later. As the mall was undergoing its second phase expansion, a fire broke out on the roof of the JCPenney on June 3, 1999. Flames broke through into the mall, and melted tar and plastic were dripping onto customers and workers inside. Luckily, the fire was contained within an hour and no serious injuries were reported. This just goes to show that construction can be dangerous, and it sometimes brings a loss to the operation, especially when the work is being done during normal operating hours. Despite this setback, the work trudged forward, and on September 17, 1999, the Nordstrom had its grand opening, along with its brand new concourse. As part of this second phase expansion, the food court would also be moved from the center court to the Sears concourse as the mall traversed into the new millennium. To add to newly opened outdoor plaza offerings such as LL Bean and PF Chang's in 2001 and 2002, a brand new AMC Columbia 14-screen movie theater would open. 1 year later, the mall would see its first change in ownership when Chicago-based General Growth Properties acquired the Rouse Company for $12.7 billion in November of 2004, and it was around this time that I would start visiting the mall with Fritz. The Hecht's would be rebranded to Macy's in 2006 following the Federated Department Store's acquisition of Hecht's, and by September 9, 2006, the Hecht's name had been completely defunct. The LL Bean was shuttered in 2013 to allow for a new expansion to the outdoor experience for the mall, and after a year of construction, the 70,000 square foot outdoor dining and recreational area was opened in 2014. By June 19, 2017, GGP had committed to changes at the mall to shift retailers around and to bring new offerings to the food court. Among these changes was also the choice to diminish the Sears footprint to just the lower level, closing off the second floor, and to remove the center fountain, which was gone by the following year in 2018, along with Sears, which shuttered entirely later that year to be replaced by a Main Event Entertainment. By March 16th, 2018, I showed up to film my first official director's update at the mall in Columbia for the ExLog. It was also in late 2018 that GGP was acquired by their earlier lifeboat, Brookfield Asset Management, when they put up $21.5 billion in November to purchase the entire GGP portfolio, including the mall in Columbia. And then 2020 appeared out of nowhere, stinking of putrid garbage, making the entire world retch in its decay. The Roaring Twenties were supposed to be promising, with bright eyes and full of purpose. But instead, this decade began its life tossing every manner of idiocy at the world it could muster. Just as we rounded the corner towards 2021, Promised Land, COVID-19 forced itself on the world in the most grotesque manner, without consent and without remorse. While people were getting sick, malls weren't immune. Bulletproof malls, such as the mall in Columbia, even suffered loss, as the Lord & Taylor announced its closure of all 38 remaining stores in their company, while the gray ghosts across rural America would fall in droves, ushering in the great Mallpocalypse of the 21st century, of which Columbia will most assuredly survive. But it will survive in the wake of America's brick-and-mortar retail twilight. Why did Jim Rouse choose to name his city and flagship mall Columbia? As we take a walk around his mall and eventually towards the lakefront, I'd like to explain the rationale behind the word Columbia and its implications of becoming the namesake of a city that Mr. Rouse left as his legacy. The image of the personified Columbia was often displayed as a woman between youth and middle age, adorned in garments of the classical era, with stars and stripes and shoulder decorations like a war general. She was iconified in popular media with a red and white striped dress and a blue blouse, shawl, or sash spangled with white stars, often wearing a cap of liberty. She would be referred to as either Lady Columbia or Miss Columbia, and can be tied back to Christopher Columbus, making Miss Columbia the feminine archetype of the good that America could aspire to. This is my favorite courtyard I've probably ever seen at any mall. This is what malls are all about. They're supposed to be enjoyed, but people enjoy different things about them. Some people go to the mall to enjoy high fashion. Others go for the food court, some go for the fountains, but I go for places like this. These places of solitude where you can just get lost in your thoughts. This is what a mall was meant to be. Do you guys have a spot at your local mall that you would just love to spend your free time at, loafing around? Let me know in the comments. Jim Rouse took the raw feminine power of the archetypical Columbia as the spirit of the frontier, along with the promise of what a combined community could accomplish, and the personified image of Columbia to signify freedom and the pursuit of liberty, and named his flagship mall and city after this, creating what we know today as Columbia, Maryland. I spent a ton of time at this mall throughout my youth, especially in the summers during high school. At the time, I didn't have a car yet, so I'd drive my mom to work at Hecht's, where she worked as the lead visual designer, and I'd go up the street to pick Fritz up at his house so we could longboard around the city. We would get into stupid trouble so much with mall security on most days. One notable time, though, we were on the roof of one of the garages, and a security SUV started coming after us. Their truck certainly wasn't nimble, but Fritz and I were, on our longboards. So we dashed down towards the bottom of the garage and made a break for the open parking lot of the JCPenney. Another security guard came up to us, probably called in by the other guy, and he stopped us. The guy, who revealed his name to be Ty, told us we had to leave because we were taking pictures and skateboarding. Ultimately, he asked if we wanted to ride in his truck back to our car, so we piled our longboards into the security truck and he drove us off. He actually made the recommendation of skating the lower lakeside portion of Columbia with the ramps, so we took him up on the offer and headed across the bridge and towards the lakefront, which became an infamous spot for us to skate in the summers. We got kicked out of the mall in Columbia so much, but it was never like we were bad. They just thought we were pestilent for skateboarding, so they would just kind of shush us away. So we were never banned, we never did anything malicious or nefarious. We were just teenagers skateboarding, getting on the nerves of security. I don't regret it one bit. And as a matter of fact, the day that I was filming this very episode, just a week ago, as I was filming the massive 19th century clock, go back and watch, you'll see a guy in a blue shirt. He came up to me and he told me that I had to go. So as fate would have it, I got kicked out of Columbia one last time. Recently, I learned that a new massive Whole Foods was built on the property, which saw the destruction of the ramps that Fritz and I used to skate. That was a massive bummer. But I do have footage of the two of us skating that spot back in the day. This lakefront area was my teenage years. This is where we would hang out every summer. Between the mall, Fritz's house, drop my mom off at work just so I can use the car and do stupid power slides in empty parking lots, skateboarding around this area. This is where I had my teenage years. Even though I lived in Baltimore, I spent my summers here with Fritz. And I was so bummed out to find out that those ramps were destroyed. But if you stay after the credits, you will catch footage of me and Fritz skating those very ramps, and the story that I told you about Ty the security guard and this fabled skate spot, with Fritz and I almost wrecking in our youth. Make sure you stay after the credits. I'd like to thank all of you for watching my video and for sticking with me so far through 74 episodes. Making this series is an absolute delight, and in all of my years of editing video, producing this series has been the most fun that I've had in the editing room. Between the vintage ads and the sponsor spots, the amazing malls and locations, and the music and goofy stuff I put over the mall PA system, It's really an awesome time editing these pieces together for you. And to be honest, if you're still with me at this point, you may as well just subscribe and ring the bell. If you're still watching, you're clearly into my series, and I would really appreciate it if you showed me a little bit of love by clicking that subscribe button and ringing the bell for all notifications. As it is, only a small percent of my views are from people that are actually subscribed to me, so it would mean the world to me if we could pump those numbers up and get this channel on the road to 100,000 subscribers. I know we can do it, guys. I'll bring the content, you guys bring the subs. Thanks especially to my patrons and elite explorers who support my series directly by putting gas in my tank to take these expeditions. To the Dead Malls of Discord family, you all rock. And if you all want to get in on that party and join our troop, just download the Discord app for free and click the link in my description to join. Also, consider subscribing to my Instagram and Twitter @SalvatoreAmadeo to follow my expeditions in real time. Please stay tuned for some super fresh Dead Mall content this Halloween with a place that I'm positive will send chills down all of your spines. But until then, stay safe, take care, and have a fantastic day. Are you guys still there? I have some after credit footage that I'd like to show you. And remember earlier when I mentioned that if you were still with me, you should subscribe? Well, if you're still with me at this point, you definitely need to subscribe. If you're waiting till after credit sequences in my series, you really need to subscribe. It's not even an option. But here you go. Here's footage from 2004 of me and Fritz getting kicked out of the mall in Columbia and skateboarding around, almost eating shit. Enjoy.
Well, like, no pictures, no skateboarding. What else is there to do? We've already been kicked out of Towson. Now we're kicked out of here.
That's just the same company.
You can just drop us off here. We're in this. Oh wait, this isn't the one.
Yeah,
it's next one.
There's JCPenney here and there's Hex down here.
Yeah,
like if you go down these stairs and around the corner of the building, there's a bridge that goes across the road.
Awesome, we're going. Have a great day, Ty.
All right, guys.
Let's get our boards. Hold on. That's fine. So look what we found. This is slope, not stairs. I think this should be the last thing we skate today. What do you say?
I concur.
This should be the last of my... All right, here we go.